Okay, good morning. Let us call this meeting to order at 9:03 a.m. Can we start with roll call, please?
Chair Okrepke.
Here.
Councilmember Fleming.
Here.
Let the record reflect that all committee members are present with the exception of Vice Mayor Alvarez.
Thank you very much. There is no remote participation. Any modifications to the agendas? No modifications to the agenda. Announcements from staff at all?
We have no announcements today, Chair.
Excellent. Let's go to 5, approval of minutes. Any edits to the minutes? Seeing none, we will adopt those as submitted. We will do public comment on the minutes. If there is anybody that would like to do public comment on the minutes, seeing none, we will move on to public comment on non-agenda matters. This is the opportunity for anyone to give 3 minutes of public comment to anything within the purview of the Economic Development Subcommittee. All you have to do is move towards the podium. Nobody's moving, so we will end public comment on non-agenda matters and move right into the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. Next would be matters held in committee. I believe that there are no matters held in committee.
Nope.
That moves us on to partner reports. Today, Chair, the Economic Development Subcommittee will be receiving a presentation from our partner and Deputy Director of Finance, Scott Wagner from the Finance Department, with a general overview of sales tax and how sales tax functions in the city of Santa Rosa.
Thank you very much.
Now I'll turn it over to Deputy Director Wagner.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning, Chair Okrepke, Member Fleming. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. What we hope to do, or what I hope to do this morning, is really just give a general overview of the city's sales tax and really address a couple of main points off of that. One being really what is the composite of the city's sales tax, what goes in, what comes out, what comes back to the city, and where those dollars go from a big perspective. Additionally, what I want to do is start kind of cracking the nut on some of the terminology that's frequently used around sales tax. There's been a lot of discussion about how those terms get used and where the money goes, so we will do that. But before I get into a slide with a whole bunch of words or a whole bunch of numbers on it, I want to speak broadly about the city's sales tax. So for $100 worth of taxable goods in the city of Santa Rosa, the city of Santa Rosa, meaning our local government, receives $1.75. So effectively, the city has a direct sales tax rate of 1.75%. Additionally, what I'll add is if you think about the amount of services we are able to provide to the city with that 1.75, it's really a lot. Sales tax makes up around 35 to 40% of the city's general fund ongoing budgets. So really a huge amount of service to the community is coming from a $1.75 per 100 transactions. So it's really big. I think messaging around sales tax can be challenging in that way because oftentimes it comes to us as how much is sales tax in the city of Santa Rosa? Well, it's important to call out it's not just the city receiving those dollars, it's the state and it's the county as well. So we're going to get into those specifics. Scott, if you wouldn't mind skipping to slide 3 maybe? I'm going to break some rules and skip around, but bear with me. Go one backwards, please. Sorry, I'm an accountant, so I like to speak numbers. So here's the one with the most numbers on it. But on the left, we're going to go through that breakout. And so from a big picture perspective, on the left, what I've listed out is each of the county sales tax measures on top. There's a total of 8 county sales tax measures in Sonoma County. That equals a total of 2% worth of sales tax. That's broken out above. Those specific county sales tax measures that are in orange, reddish there, the city receives a portion of that as funding back to us. Not all, but a portion. So we do receive some direct budgeting assistance through those tax measures. We come down to the blue part, which is my favorite part. It's the city's portion, direct. These are city sales tax measures. As you know, we have a 0.5%, what we call Measure Q. to fund general city sales tax services that went in act after the 2017 fires. We additionally have a 0.25% public safety tax. This was back in the day, this was called Measure O. We try to call it PSAP now, but that funds fire, police, and violence prevention services in the city at 0.25%. The bottom part is the state's portion. Now note that the state makes up 7.25% of total sales tax. Of that though, of their 7.25%, 1% comes directly back to us. So for me, the direct allocations to the city is that 1% from the Bradley-Burns tax, and we're gonna talk about why it's called Bradley-Burns, along with that 0.75 worth of city tax measures, or what we'll call transaction use taxes. On the right, what I've listed out for reference is how the city of Santa Rosa stacks up against our other municipalities within the county. As you'll note here, we're in blue. We're towards the middle of it, we'll call it. Not at the top, not at the bottom, but we are at 10%. Additionally, I've listed out how our county, Sonoma County, stacks up against other Northern California counties on a transaction use tax or direct tax or tax measure basis. As we talked about, eight total tax measures for 2% versus go down the list. Our neighbors in Napa are at 1 with 0.5%, or Marin 3 at 1%, et cetera. So this is a summary of the numbers. Scott, can you go back one slide, please? Okay, great. So what I want to do now is kind of drill down on some of the frequent terminology that gets thrown around with sales tax, which I think is overly complex from what it needs to be. So what I want you to think about is really sales tax comes through 3 different types of streams. That stream that we just talked about is the Bradley-Burns stream. That comes direct from the state. 1% comes directly back to us. Technically, Bradley-Burns is 1.25%. That extra 0.25% gets sent off to county transportation. We won't really talk about that one now because we don't get it. Additionally, that second big stream we talk about are the transaction and use taxes or district taxes. I will call that also city measures. I think it's, in my head, it's a lot easier to understand as those are the city's tax measures. These other terms get thrown around, I think, more predominantly, but for me, my brain just goes direct to city tax measure. Same thing with Bradley-Burns. In my mind, I don't really care for that Bradley-Burns terminology. I just think pass through from the state. Bradley-Burns, pass through from the state. Where things get additionally complicated as whenever in anything in life, you have many different hands in the same pot, different rules get made. And this has been a growing issue in certain areas, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So it's good to understand that Bradley-Burns versus TUT, or the pass-through versus a city tax measure, can be treated completely differently for the same exact type of transaction. So for example, internet sales. This has been a growing issue because more and more folks over time are not going to brick and mortars like they used to. They are transacting through, frankly, Amazon. So through the TUT or through a city measure, the majority of that tax revenue would go into a county pool and get allocated back to us. So it gets treated pretty, I would say, fairly to the city. Through the TUT, though, the tax revenue is allocated to the jurisdiction which it was shipped. So what's important there is that from the city of Santa Rosa's perspective, we do not have an Amazon fulfillment center in Santa Rosa. So let's say, for example, I buy a pen from Amazon right now. Well, I should owe, let's say, $1 worth of sales tax on this pen. Well, if they ship the pen from Richmond, Richmond is going to get the TUT portion of that sales tax, not Santa Rosa, even though I'm a Santa Rosa resident. But the Bradley-Burns aspect of it looks at it and goes, Scott lives in Santa Rosa, this is Santa Rosa's sales tax. Santa Rosa gets the sales tax dollars. that first part where the Amazon thing happened, that's not how it always was. There is currently a city managers working group through the League of Cities working on really taking a look at that change. That's something that's been talked about. I think there's a lot of parties very vested in having that, from my bias perspective, corrected. But that's going to be complicated, and that change, even if everyone was coming to the table ready to make that change, it wouldn't happen for another 3 or 4 cycles. It's a ways down the road. We're seeing what I would describe as loss from this change of treatment of sales tax. I don't have an exact dollar amount for what it is, but we know it's there. We've been trying to work with our sales tax consultant to try to give us a picture. Please.
Yeah, I have a question, well, just specific to this, which is, it was my understanding that this has been a problem for a while, but that it had been corrected, or there had been a few years ago, there was some reallocation, like during COVID, of these funds. And so I'm just wondering, like, when was this, the TUT portion, was it always like this, or was it legislation that came in when online became more prevalent?
Thank you for your question, Member Fleming. I don't have that history written out right in front of me, so I don't want to speak to it too specifically. But to your question, yes, there was a fix during COVID of an error that happened, really backtracking us. No, this isn't how it always was. This has been a change. And I think your third question.
I was just wondering, so the fix that happened during COVID, was that a one-off?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
There needs to be a greater fix for this problem, I think, is the nexus of your question.
Okay, thanks.
I'll use a couple more examples for this difference of how sales tax gets treated. So a Petaluma resident for TUT buys a car in Santa Rosa, Petaluma receives the TUT sales tax. Petaluma resident buys a car in Santa Rosa for the Bradley Burns portion, now Santa Rosa receives the sales tax. Retail gets treated the same. If it, brick and mortar, regardless of which one it is, we're going to get the same treatment. So through these nuanced examples, what I hope to illustrate is that in some ways, it's unfortunate that a simple percentage is treated so differently in different ways. And as consumers change their habits or behaviors, that can have either a benefit to the city or not.
Do you mind us throwing questions in here, as this is somewhat
Absolutely.
of a nuanced subject?
Yeah.
So if a Petaluma resident buys a car in Santa Rosa, where they should buy one,
Of
right?
course, of course.
Both TUT and Bradley Burns stay in Santa Rosa?
No. So the Bradley Burns portion,
Remits to Petaluma?
I have to read it each time. That's how, so for the TUT portion, Petaluma is going to receive that sales tax.
Okay,
But
imagine.
for Bradley Burns, we do.
Okay. Imagine that the person buys it from Amazon Fulfillment Center in Santa Rosa for the purposes of discussion. Then is that the same split?
That is a fantastic question, and I think it's prescient to thinking ahead, especially for policymakers. Because the auto industry has so many carve-outs and everything, I don't want to speak authoritative to it at the moment.
Let's
but
make it
to your
something that
point,
wasn't a car.
It's internet sales.
Yes.
So yes, my assumption is that it would get treated that way that top bullet is.
Which is the
A greater level of loss for the city. It would be bad. So the majority of the tax revenue would get allocated to the county pool for Bradley Burns, or for TUT, it would get allocated to the jurisdiction from which it was shipped. So yes, if they were shipping cars from Richmond, TUT
Right.
would, and I shouldn't call it, I should say a different jurisdiction, but.
Okay. I might have more questions. It's a
Please.
little complex.
It is. The third revenue stream for sales tax that I'll bring up is what we call the county pool, which I've now already said a couple times. But fundamentally, there are some transactions that just don't necessarily have a set location or a use tax that has a set location, and they go into something called the county pool. And the county pool, the state puts it all together, and they just look at the different cities, and if you have 4% of taxable sales in the city of Santa Rosa for the state, we're going to receive 4% of that money. It's pretty simple. Can you go to the last slide, Scott? A third subject I wanted to bring up today is to really note that not all transactions or sales are taxable from a sales tax basis. The state of California has a high sales tax rate when you look at it nationwide. But what's also important to point out there is that a lot of taxable, what would be considered a taxable good in a different state is not taxable in California. So what we say is that we have a high rate, but we have a narrowest sales tax base in the country. So what we enforce sales tax on is actually much narrower than other parts of the country. And what this chart on the right is, it's a chart from the Legislative Analyst's Office, which I really like, which shows that in terms of household spending. So those bars represent household spending, and it shows, you know, as we all know, housing and utilities is where we spend the majority of our expenses, not taxed. Or groceries. Some states' groceries are have sales tax on them. Education, auto insurance, maintenance, et cetera. You know, things like labor services in the state or many home services are not subject to sales tax where they would be in other states often. So we have a high rate, but not everything is included. And with that, I covered an awful lot, and I will be very pleased to take any additional questions you have.
Sure. I'll start while Member Fleming, that is too big of a word for me to say. So I don't know if you are up to speed, but I know this is a fix. There's fixes that have been coming over a period of time to try to right this ship, but they are slow. So, and if I recall correctly, the most recent one is the Wayfair decision. Are you familiar with the Wayfair decision?
In passing, not enough to speak on it at the moment, yes.
All right. Essentially, what I'm trying to get at is that, and for people watching this at home or in the room, the reason why we're talking about taxes and sales tax and having the finance department here is basically to speak to the economic development aspect of brick and mortar sales going local. Not just in the importance of supporting our local businesses, but what it means to support our local government and our everyday citizens here and residents here. So this has been a, would it be fair to say that since COVID, there's been a fundamental shift in how those taxable goods below are being purchased and the buying habits of the average person?
Thank you for your question. I believe I follow, and I would add and concur that yes, local transactions benefit the community and certainly the city government in many ways. We keep a greater share of those portions given the changes since COVID that we talked about. So yes, it is a great investment for really the community and for the city to drive local sales tax through brick and mortar.
Okay, and then if we were to put a number on that TUT 0.5%, what does that mean to the city each year, roughly?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Krupke, can you define the 0.5 again?
It's the city general tax that you have.
Got it. So for that, we are at roughly I don't have that right off the top of my head. I don't want to get the number wrong. We will get back to you on exactly what that drives each year on a dollar basis.
Okay, could you give a generalized version of it, understanding that that could shift? Is it 1 million? Is it 300 million?
Yeah, it's closer to 23.
Okay, thank you. All right. I think those are all my questions for right now. We will move to public comment on this matter. If you have a comment on this sales tax overview for the city of Santa Rosa in regards to economic development, please move to one of the podiums now. There is nobody even shifting in their seats, so we will close public comment, come back for final comments. Do you have any final comments?
Yeah, I do have a comment. I think this is generally pretty important information to socialize the council to, so thank you for taking the time to do so. I think from a policy perspective, if we can have a little bit of story about, so I know that Wayfair is a decision that affects us. I don't know how it does. And so sort of putting all of that into context and then helping us understand how we got to here could be additionally helpful in us building out the framework to hang this knowledge on as we go forward and deal with the current economic and fiscal realities. Additionally, a visual or some sort of chart might be useful in explaining the Bradley Burns stuff, because it's really news to me that if I go in person to another jurisdiction and buy something, that any of my tax dollars spent in another jurisdiction would remit that back to my home jurisdiction. And I can't even begin to figure out how they would figure out where I'm from if I'm paying in cash in another jurisdiction. So some additional clarity on that would be helpful. And the last thing I'll say is I don't think that there is too much of this that you could be providing to the council in terms of education and background at this point in time. So thank you for doing that.
I agree on all points. This is critical, and with the first slide you started on that you like because you're a CPA and it's all numbers, it's also something that maybe an average resident may not have an easy time to digest. So I think any sort of chart or visualization that could help with that would be useful. But I do want to go back to the point of that slide 6. If you could throw that up, Scott, I would really appreciate it. There you go. Those blue numbers, where we sit on the city actually and what the city actually has direct to them to us for a tax, as well as where we rank amongst other cities in the county, is important. You know, being in the bottom third, we'll call it, but also being the largest city with the largest budget and the largest breadth of responsibility in terms of public safety, water, whatever it may be, is important to understand. And so I would encourage our chamber and our economic partners to really continue to drive home, go local, that brick and mortar is important. And that, you know, if you really like a shirt, you can buy it on Saturday instead of having it delivered on Wednesday, so that it benefits our city. Is there any final comments from our team in regards to this, and anything else you would like to convey?
No, thank you for your comments. I will, as we're here to Member Fleming's question, yes, it is really complex, especially the idea that I bought a car somewhere else, but yet the sales tax dollars come back to us. I will add, just as a point of clarity, that's unique to auto sales, because and the way they know that is really it comes back to where you registered the vehicle. So they know, okay, Scott registered his vehicle in Santa Rosa. He lives in Santa Rosa. That portion now goes back there. There really is no other type of carve out quite like auto. But thank you.
Then perhaps it was a problem that I used an auto as an example, because I wasn't really trying to get to a carve out. I was trying to generally understand the principles. So let's pick another widget. if I go to Petaluma and buy a widget with cash, do they get both Bradley Burns and TUT?
Yes.
Okay. And that's the case for all brick and mortars, regardless of the method of payment, cash, credit card, whatever, because I know with credit cards they're more easily trackable. Okay.
Yes, and I would say that's one of the big benefits for us.
Okay, because I was starting to question the benefit of getting this fixed if it was going to remit the same in person as it would online, but it's just an auto carve out. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, and again, thank you very much for this information. I know that when we're looking at stuff like this, I would say probably the majority of people watching this meeting would not think that numbers are the sexiest topic to discuss and go forward, but it is a critical and crucial topic to have an understanding and to circulate amongst council and our residents so that they understand the implications of how they purchase and where they purchase. So that we will move on to the next item. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair, and I also want to again thank Deputy Director Scott Wagner from the Finance Department for joining us today to make that presentation. We're going to move on to Section 9, which is Department Reports. There are a number of department reports that we are going to cover in this section. For 9.1, we're going to have a brief discussion and presentation from Program Analyst Rachel Beer on the Economic Development Strategy Implementation Plan update. And just for context, for those members of the public who may be new to this conversation, City Council adopted a new Economic Development Strategic Plan in April of 2024. That plan is supplemented or augmented by an implementation plan, which is quite broad and extensive. That implementation plan has previously been brought to the Economic Development Subcommittee for review. In June, we did a fairly comprehensive report out on the various implementation portions of that plan. Today, we're going to do a general overview of where we're at, not as in-depth as our June report out. Rachel Beer, Program Analyst, is going to hit some just primary highlights, and then we'll answer any questions that you might have. And then moving forward on a quarterly basis, we'll do more of a deeper dive on this plan. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rachel.
Great. Thank you so much, Scott, and good morning, Chair Krupke and Councilmember Fleming. Thank you so much for having me here again. As you can see by our charts that were attached to our agenda, our team has made great progress on a lot of our projects, our goals, and initiatives for the implementation plan since I last reported out in April in detail. I'll be reviewing, like Scott mentioned, our high-level accomplishments for each category, and at the very end, our team's happy to answer any of these in detail if you'd like to hear more. For our first slide here, business growth and retention, our highlights are we executed our contracts for our virtual one-stop shop as well as Placer AI for our analytics. We've completed our retail and office sector analyses, and our grocery analysis is in progress. We have ongoing conversations with our planning department on permit process improvements. We are consistently engaging in conversation with commercial real estate brokers. And we have a draft plan and target industries list has been created and is being reviewed currently by our city management. So those are some highlights for business growth and retention. And we can move on to our next slide, entrepreneurship and small business. We've strengthened our partnerships with the SBDC, Go Local, Redwood Credit Union, and our Economic Development Collaborative. Our internship recruitment just closed, and we will be conducting interviews and going through the hiring process this month over the next couple of weeks. Our Rise and Thrive program has continued. We hosted another meeting last week, so that's continued quarterly. The micro enterprise home kitchen operations has continued. We had our first one approved last month. Our team has worked with planning techs to begin laying groundwork for educating entrepreneurs on zoning clearance guidelines, particularly for those looking to operate businesses from home. So that's supporting home-based trends. And those are our highlights for that category. Our next one here, economic vibrancy and resiliency. Our department leadership are meeting regularly to identify zoning code enhancements for driving economic development. We've initiated many arts and culture projects, including our temporary art walk that will be coming this fall. So that's part of our public art strategic plan. Event coordination for Courthouse Square is now managed in-house, and we're looking forward to moving forward with the new event specialist position. So those are some highlights from economic vibrancy and resiliency. And our last category here, community investment. Our annual survey is currently being distributed through August 15th. And we are meeting with childcare organizations to explore support opportunities. And that concludes our overview, our highlights for the implementation plan progress.
Thank you, Rachel. We're happy to take any questions that the committee may have with regards to our implementation plan progress year to date.
I don't have any questions. Member Fleming indicated she doesn't have any questions. We'll go to public comment on this item, so I don't want to go through all 9.1 through, I believe it was 8, and wait till the end on that. So anybody with public comment on 9.1? Seeing none, we will move on to 9.2.
All right, thank you, Chair. And again, we will bring quarterly a more in-depth review of this particular plan. Moving on to 9.2, the committee received in its agenda packet a copy of this draft quarterly economic report. This economic report will be made publicly available and available on our website and through our one-stop, our dashboard in the future. We've worked to include certain econometrics and key performance indicators in this report that have come out of conversations with this committee and also from direction that we've received from council. This is in draft form. We're bringing it to you today for any comments, insights, questions that you might have before we move toward a finished copy available for public consumption. And again, I'm going to turn it over to our program analyst, Rachel Beer, who's going to walk through some highlights of this report, and then we'll answer any questions or accept any feedback that you might have at that time. So, Rachel.
Great, thank you. As Scott mentioned, I developed this report here based on feedback that we've had at previous meetings here. I've done my best to include all of our categories that we've expressed interest in, and we're happy to take any feedback. Some of the overview or some of the highlights here that I'll just go through quickly are the business and development indicators. So we looked at unemployment rate, wage metrics, our commercial real estate indicators, trending vacancy rates, market rates, community profile metrics, so that's income and spending for the city, business development indicators, so our business licenses, businesses in key industries, our new businesses opened and closed, as well as program metrics, so how Santa Rosa compares to other cities, as well as our global and regional economic conditions, our programs funded within our economic development department, our annual survey progress. So I put our survey progress as of August 1st in the report, some transportation data, as well as arts and culture programming. I'd also like to mention, kind of to piggyback off of Scott's comment, that we will be working with Dr. Eiler from Sonoma State University to assist our team in creating an economic dashboard. So that will include data more easily accessed online and also quarterly report outs. So kind of interpretation of the data. Thank you.
All right, we'll bring it back to the committee for any questions or feedback.
No questions. My one point of feedback on this is thank you so much for doing this. It is a lengthy document. And by that I mean not number of pages, but in data. There's a lot to digest there, and it's great. I mean, if you're looking to bring a business here, if you're looking to grow your business here, a lot of key indicators on things that are happening that can complement you, as well as just any individual that wants to know what's going on in the city. This is fantastic, and I appreciate the work that's gone into this. So with that, on this item, 9.2, right? Yes. 9.2, we'll go to public comment. Seeing none, we will move on to 9.3.
All right, Chair, moving right along today. We're going to move on to 9.3. This is a review and discussion item concerning vacant space activation, and we'll be asking your committee today to rank and review a number of options and to provide some feedback to staff. Previously, the Economic Development Team and Planning and Economic Development Director made a presentation to City Council to talk about activating vacant parcels and vacant spaces, including vacant spaces in the downtown. Since that period of time, our team has done research to identify what other communities have been doing to assist and support in the backfill of vacancies, particularly in their densely tenanted areas of commerce, so downtowns, major retail nodes, major commercial or industrial nodes, etc. It is somewhat challenging because in this effort we're attempting to impact something that is really privately or market sector or private market driven. However, there are a number of programs that we were able to vet in terms of not just talking with our existing business community, but also working with other communities to identify where these investments for a pilot for activation strategies could be most useful or have the most impact. So we've been able to narrow it down to these 4 bullet pointed items. It's important to note that there is limited funding for this. We have approximately $50,000. Possibly if we move some implementation activities or strategies around, up to $100,000, but no more, to implement a pilot for one of these programs. And I'll just go through them briefly. Through our research and our conversations with building owners and landlords, we have learned that building owners are hesitant to lease space to new businesses who do not have commercial lease history. So one option would be to generate or create a landlord recovery fund, which would help landlords to take risks on taking chances on executing leases with newly established businesses or with entrepreneurs. Another idea in conversations that we've had, not on the landlord side, but on the lessee side, is that a lot of these entrepreneurs or newly established businesses, because they've not leased commercial space for before, it's relatively new to them, and they have not a lot of expertise in understanding leases, build-out timelines, permitting, financial readiness, etc. So one way possibly to invest the money for a pilot would be to establish a new commercial renter education program. Moving on to the last 2, in talking with some of the existing businesses, and in particular businesses in our downtown, we've learned that direct feedback from those businesses concerning what we can do as a city to improve or backfill space within the downtown is to improve the facades of those vacancies that do exist. And so the development of a facade improvement grant program, again, a pilot, could offer expanded funding or help assist with exterior appearances of those downtown buildings to encourage lease activity and more foot traffic into those spaces. And then finally, looking at what other cities and municipalities are doing where they've had some success in investing funding into these types of pilots would be the development of a vacant unit infill grant program, which would be small-scale business grants to help entrepreneurs or newly established businesses activate in vacant spaces, more likely under short-term leases through a temporary use permit, so that they have the ability to essentially test their product or their service as they consider long-term tenancy or even purchase of that building. With the limited amount of funding that we do have, staff would recommend that we choose one of these options to pilot. I don't believe we have enough funding to really pilot more than one. We'd like to bring this to you today to get your feedback, hear any insights that you might have, if there's anything that you believe staff has perhaps missed, and to develop a prioritization so that we can make a decision moving forward on how to invest these funds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yeah, I do have some questions. I'm wondering about the costs associated with the various ideas here. Some of them seem like they might cost more money than others.
So it would be staff and administrative cost or expense to implement these. Unfortunately, there's not a heavy lift on piloting. We would do it within our existing budget allocation that we have for existing staff would administer it under that budget line item.
Okay, what I was thinking was that the facade improvement grant program might be one that costs more money than the other ones. Is that the case?
Good morning, Chair Okrepke and Councilmember Fleming. With these programs, and that really is an excellent point, is the value for those dollars and how we can distribute that to the community, and the vastness of that distribution is very much based on how much it costs at each individual location. So with the facade piece, it really depends on the level of improvements that are allowed under the program. What we actually allowed with our existing facade program that's supported by ARPA dollars was there was a wide variety of improvements that were allowed: windows, awnings, painting. To broaden the disbursement to ensure eligibility, we could reduce it down to say that it's literally the painting of the building, replacement of windows, updating signs, and that helps to control the costs, because the facade program can get considerably expensive. To give you just a scope, with our ARPA program, there were 45 grants, and the total dollar allocation was a little over 1.1 million in ARPA dollars to that program. But it did include some fairly significant improvements to the front of the building. So this would have to be less than that, and it likely would have to focus on beautification, maybe some art components, painting, general maintenance that just improves the look of the building and makes it more attractive for leasing.
I'll be honest, in this time where we no longer have ARPA funds going towards this, it seems like that's a tough lift. And if we did do it, I would want to look at conditioning those improvements on certain types of activation requirements and lease-up requirements if we didn't already have those in place under the original program. You know, it's challenging in this time where we're really scaling back services to be investing in private spaces unless we can be really clear on the direct return on investment. But that said, $1.1 million on 45 grantees seems very, very, like the program went quite a long ways to do things. So I'm not against it. I just want to make sure that we are looking at everything holistically across the city. You know, people have lost their jobs, and to be spending money on private investment, and if we can't make a really direct, clear case for how that's going to come back to the city, I think that's a tough sell for both our employees and our residents at this moment in time. But I'll wait and hear other questions before I talk about the other programs.
Thank you. Couple questions. We'll just go in order. Landlord Recovery Fund, how exactly would that work? When you say incurred losses, is that just straight non-payment of rent, or what does that mean?
Right. Happy to answer that. The Landlord Recovery Fund would be a set aside of the $50,000, and we would cap it per instance, likely at $5,000 per instance or per event, so that we could fund up to 10 losses for landlords. The staff time to administer that would be outside of the $50,000, so it would just come out of our staff budget. The $50,000 would be used to make landlords whole who experienced either losses related to the cost of re-tenanting that space or cost of improvements to the space if that entrepreneur or that newly established business were to vacate prior to the end of their lease term. So it could be recovering commissions, recovering permit fees, recovering costs of improving the space, et cetera.
Okay. The Facade Improvement Grant Program, I have the same concerns. Is it, because I'm not on either, when it comes to the EIFD or the PFA, is that something that could be incorporated into that, or is that something that the EIFD is looking at as for downtown?
I can answer that in part, and then I'll turn it over to Director Osborne concerning the EIFD. Again, as with the Landlord Recovery Fund, the idea is that this would be a pilot. Certainly, it's not enough funding to for a program long-term. So whether it's the Landlord Recovery Fund, Vacant Unit Infill Grant Program, or a Facade Improvement Grant Program 2.0, the idea would be to break it up into 10 $5,000 awards, again with the staff time being covered out of our budget, not out of the $50,000, and the $5,000 would go toward some of the things that Director Osborne mentioned, would be facade improvements primarily related to aesthetics and related to improving vacant facades, whereas our previous facade improvement grant program, I believe, was for occupied spaces.
And to address the question on the EIFD, so that was formed with placemaking and streetscaping as an eligible expenditure. That's a fairly broad category. I don't believe it was envisioned that it would replace facades on businesses. So this would likely be separate from that. I do imagine that the PFA could entertain a project that provided some overall streetscaping and placemaking that did involve the improvement of private property, but that would be left open to the PFA, the council, and the Board of Supervisors to decide. So I do think two separate programs here.
Okay, thank you. And then my final question is, aside from the facade improvement program, the other three do not have any sort of caveat as to geography. So would that be citywide?
That's open for discussion and part of the feedback that we wanted to receive today. The staff focus has been on areas within the downtown activation plan area, which is inclusive of the two community benefit districts, Courthouse Square and Railroad Square.
Okay, thank you. Do you have another question? All right, we'll go to public comment first on this matter. All right, we have one public commenter. Please make your way up to a podium. You will have 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record if you wish.
Hi, my name is AJ Trombetta, and I'm with Railroad Square's Business Development Committee and also property owner down in the downtown area. I really appreciate these vacant space activation strategies, and I know it might seem like, perhaps not a judicious use of taxpayer dollars to invest in facades. However, for some of these older buildings, it can be a really heavy lift for these property owners who are facing sidewalk replacement and exterior painting and windows, and a small grant, even $10,000, even something for paint would certainly be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? We will close public comment and come back for final comments.
Thank you. I love the idea of making sure that our downtowns are fully vital and active at all times, and the highest and best use of the space. I support deploying these initiatives throughout the downtown and Courthouse Square, Railroad Square. I would be pressed to figure out how it would be really to the whole city's benefit to do this beyond the downtown. At this point in time, given our limited resources. Not that it's not a valuable thing to do, but we just don't have enough. And I'm fine to use funds if we have them for facade improvements, but what I'd like to see come back with that is, there's a lot of carrots on this list, but we do have landlords that for various reasons are completely checked out, whether it's due to age or infirmity or disability or whatever. There are just folks who are not engaged in the process of rowing all in the same direction to make our downtowns be what they need to be. And so I'd love to see something on this list to compel folks who are just frankly non-responsive or not engaged to join in this process. Hopefully people can join in through carrots, but sometimes we need something to help people to get there. So if it's possible that I'm wrong and that this is not an issue, but I don't think that I am. So just take that under advisement.
And I would say for me, kind of dovetailing off of those comments, if I can paraphrase, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink sort of a situation. That's where the vacant unit infill grant program, the facade improvement grant program kind of have a a weakness for me, is because you're depending on people to come forward to use these strategies. And we could find one that has torn awning and needs paint and all that stuff, and you need them to come to you to want to do that, and they could just be like, nah, I don't care. So that leads me to the first two, and while I do appreciate the Landlord Recovery Fund, there is a certain, business is a risk aspect to it. Not that I wish this on, a loss on anybody, but what I would say is the one that I think would be the most used probably, and maybe be the most beneficial across a couple of these categories, would be the new commercial renter education program. I don't know if that's something you could talk to some of the commercial landlords about and say like, hey, I don't know if it's a certificate or whatever it might be that says like, hey, they've gone through this, they understand how to, this isn't a fly-by-night, hope in a whim kind of a situation, but they've put in work to educate themselves on what it takes to be a good tenant, on what it takes to be a good business and a successful one. That may mitigate some of the issues when it comes to the Landlord Recovery Fund, what we would use that for. And then also it would go towards maybe facade improvement, right? Where if they're a new business going in, they would want to make their facade look inviting to customers. So for me, I would probably rank the new commercial renter education program number one, because that would, in my opinion, lead to more successful businesses. It would lead to better relationships with landlords, more vacant spaces occupied, and just setting up more entrepreneurs for success. So I would probably rank that number one. Landlord Recovery Fund 2, Facade Improvement 3, and Vacant Unit Infill Grant Program 4th. Not that any of these are not worthwhile, but with a limited amount of resources, a limited amount of staff time, I think that would probably be my preference, especially when you look at the new commercial renter education program, as we're not giving grants to individuals, $5,000, $10,000 to, with a $50,000 cap. I'm assuming we could probably use it, if it's staff time, we could probably hit more individuals in that program than others.
As you were talking, there was something that came up for me, which moves up the commercial facade improvement grant in my mind. I would put that as 1 or 2, and the reason why is, as I'm thinking about it, different from landlord recovery or infill grant program, when we invest in a facade, if the business doesn't succeed, we still have that asset in the downtown, and I think that that's something worth considering. So I've waffled a little bit on that one throughout these conversations, but I do think that anything we can do that remains, a capital asset in the downtown is good. I do want to see those funds conditioned on. I don't just want to fix up someone's building and then not have them lease it out.
I think that's fair. I'd probably move that to number 2 with what you're saying. If it's conditioned, yeah, that would probably move it to up to like number 2 for me. So I would say those would be my top 2, would be the new commercial renter education program and the facade improvement 2.0.
Then we're in agreement on that.
Okay. Is that the feedback you need, or is there any more you'd like from us?
I think that Chair, I think that feedback is very helpful. Thank you. I do agree that whereas bullet points Landlord Recovery Fund, Facade Improvement Grant Program, and Vacant Unit Infill Grant Program would likely be limited to 10 or fewer participants, the new Commercial Renter Education Program could apply to as many participants as we can fit in the classroom, if you will, and also to those commercial renters who may be looking to lease space not just in the downtown but throughout the city. So I think that with this feedback that we've received today, we can take it back, staff it, put the framework together, if you will, of the pilot, launch that pilot, and then we can come back with some progress updates for you as far as how the pilot's working.
I would say, dovetailing again off Councilmember Fleming, conditioning. The one thing I would like to see with new commercial renter education program is not just somebody be like, hey, I want to open this and just have an idea and show up and take up classroom space from somebody that's not maybe in the process of applying for a business license or incorporating. Like I'd want to, have some skin in the game, so to speak, that like this is something that they're seriously considering. They've started to make progress towards it.
I think that's reasonable if we start to run out of space.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, we will move on to 9.4, entertainment zones.
Yes, Chair, for this item, I would like to turn it over to our Director of Planning and Economic Development, Director Gabe Osborne.
Thank you, Scott. So we wanted to use this agenda item to have our initial conversation with more formal direction or advice from the committee regarding entertainment zones. So just for members of the community, entertainment zones were allowed by Senate Bill 969, and what they focus on is the outdoor consumption of alcohol. So typically alcohol has to be consumed within the confines of a business, normally inside the business itself. Entertainment districts allow that use of alcohol and the sale of alcohol to extend outside. These became very popular in San Francisco before the legislation actually adopted it in the code. San Francisco had these, seen them in Sacramento and other jurisdictions who are incorporating these as well. So what this allows is for events or for outdoor uses that are drawing people to those uses, it allows those businesses that are brick and mortar, where normally that use in an event is basically coming out of a food truck or something in close proximity to the event, it allows the sale to extend out in the entertainment district. Obviously, with something like this, there are a few boxes that need to be checked. So what the legislation requires is that we work with law enforcement on a few different things. The big piece here is the boundary of the district. That's for the local jurisdiction to decide. The hours in which the district can operate, the days in which the district can operate, the containers that are utilized, they can't be metal or glass. And then there's different programs that have to be put in place for participation from the businesses, specifically around how we are verifying that the sale of alcohol is occurring to those 21 years and older. So those are typically wristbands or some of those other things that you'll see in those types of events. So for today, what we wanted to discuss really is just the general concept and to see where the committee stands on the concept. If this is a direction the committee is interested in exploring, then what do boundaries look like? And what do days of operation and hours look like? Those are the pieces we need to work on. We are having a few different conversations in the community, specifically the downtown community. This is usually where these play out, to see what sort of interest there is. There does seem to be a high amount of interest just in the general population and having that experience. So it's really important for events. It's really important if we want to drive people to the square, to just sit and enjoy the wonderful weather we have in Sonoma County and enjoy alcoholic beverage while they do so. So those are the critical pieces to activation. So really at this point we can talk about a few different boundaries. Obviously we have Courthouse Square and 4th Street. We have Railroad Square, likely has some interest. We actually have the Brickyard Center where we're seeing quite a bit of interest in that as well, Brew being part of the Brickyard Center. So one of the challenges sometimes with these districts is do you incorporate into a singular district, which obviously law enforcement has to provide input on this, or do you break it up into sub-districts? There's a few different ways that this can be handled. Ultimately, there is signage at the boundaries. There are some costs associated with that. As we get into this a little further, understanding what that looks like will be part of the process. Likely it will have to involve a formal action by the full council to incorporate it in the code. And this is literally just taking what the state has provided, which provides coverage on the ABC, the alcohol beverage licenses, and then programs can participate, businesses can participate into that, so we can actually add on to what the state has provided for how we want to see that program play out. So with that, I will hand it over to the committee. We would love to hear just general feedback. Happy to provide any answers to any questions to help guide it. But as I mentioned, this is really our first formal conversation with the committee to gain input, which will help frame how this moves forward.
Thank you so much. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious to know if you have proposed boundaries in mind.
So we've looked at a few. We can take Courthouse Square as we have it, which would include the side streets on Courthouse Square, 4th and 3rd, and really go block from B to D and have that be the main downtown area. Now, as businesses evolve, that could exclude those, so we can move that further to the north or the south. But that would generally be considered the downtown district. When we look at Railroad Square, it is generally that 4th Street corridor and the businesses around that 4th Street corridor, the park, getting closer to the SMART station. The interesting conversations that we've had with some of the businesses in the Brickyard Center and really what they want to do to activate that area is very consistent with the Brickyard Center. And there's an interest to activate. So that would take the Ross B Street area. We would obviously be involved in conversations with Brew to see what sort of interest there is to grab that. So those are the sub areas that we've discussed. Now that can join into a singular district. It really just, as I mentioned, we are in the process of discussing this with law enforcement. That will guide some of that because that district must be policed. But those are the initial discussions that have happened to date.
And would a district be in operation, daily, or would it be, something that was only in operation on certain times of the week or year?
That is something the council can decide. It could be in operation daily. It could also be in operation just on weekends. It could be operation on specific events. So it can go from really any day of the week and any time of the week and be reduced down based on how the council sees fit.
Okay. And is staff considering the potential for noise complaints associated with entertainment zones?
Yes, that's an excellent point. What we've been looking at is really how this dovetails with the noise ordinance because it does create that outdoor activity that does apply with how we enforce the noise ordinance. So depending on the level of events that go along with that, how people are moving, typically these do go along with events. That's when we see people move out of the building. And oftentimes events have amplified sound permits and other things that protect against that noise that's occurring. But obviously if this is something that happens on every day out of the week or on weekends without those events, we would have to analyze how the noise ordinance applies and what enforcement would look like on that noise ordinance.
And of course, the noise or the permits doesn't actually protect against noise. It allows for noise, and we get lots of complaints when that happens. So very interested to explore how we can implement these things in a way that drives economic growth and does not disturb the neighbors more than necessary.
Yeah, I think my only question, I have two questions right now. Can you sort of describe how this would differ from, like, let's use the Wednesday night market as an example, right? As it exists now, and then how it would differ if an entertainment zone existed at the same time?
Yes, that's an excellent question. So typically under an event, that event is permitted for the consumption of alcohol, and you'll often see it inside the event. The alcohol cannot travel past a certain perimeter, and that perimeter is typically policed. And that is very specific to the event. Once the event goes away, that right goes away along with that. What happens under the entertainment district is it holds the same concept of a boundary, but it's providing a blanket. In that boundary, any business can participate under essentially a blanket license allowance. So a participating business would just have to meet those requirements, and that participating business that could then allow alcohol to travel around in that boundary. And the business wouldn't necessarily have the same policing that events do. Events have to provide that resource to ensure that alcohol is being consumed in a safe way. Much of this does get pushed onto law enforcement when we have that boundary, because as alcohol leaves the building, that has to be policed outside of that. But the difference is really sort of a global blanket permitting for any participating business, opposed to a very specific allowance for the event and what the event is proposing from an alcohol standpoint.
Okay. Actually, I'll add another question. So should these go into effect, the restriction on sale of alcohol would still be the same as it exists today, and that would be governed by the ABC and not necessarily SRPD. Is that correct?
That is correct. So at the individual level, the type of alcohol license that a business has would not change. So for those that really are wine and beer, that's the same. This is really just the movement of alcohol outside of the building into the entertainment district.
And then my last question is, should we implement this on a more conservative level and then we wish to expand, alteration of this, would that have to, so if we start with just Courthouse Square, and then Brickyard wants to participate, so we want to extend that to Brickyard. Would that have to be a full council decision? Would that be administrative? Would that be have to go through Planning Commission and then council? How would that work?
We're still working through some of those details on the flexibility of how we can expand and contract. My immediate response would be is it likely is embedded in the code, which requires a full council action to memorialize that unless there's some discretion that's delegated. Obviously, with the expansion and contraction, we would want that to be a public process with public input on that. And then typically something like this, because it affects land use, but it really is a policy decision of the city council, that we would probably not bring forward a delegation to the Planning Commission. This likely would be council or staff.
All right, those are all my questions for right now. We'll go to public comment on this matter. Is there anybody that would like to comment on entertainment zones? Seeing none, we'll come back for final comments. All right. All right, so I have a couple comments. We'll finish up. Sorry, you're going to have to wait, and then we'll take a brief recess. My opinion is we start with special events, sort of put our, dip our toes in the water before we go full bore. I think it's important to note that this is not going to be like Las Vegas or New Orleans, where it's like the entire city. You can walk around and do whatever you want. I first experienced something like this in the city of Savannah, where there are specific blocks on the riverfront that you can go, and if you go too far away, there's signs that are posted, and it can be enforced. Yes, I would like to know the cost of infrastructure as we go down this pathway, what that would cost for signage and stuff like that. It's going to take a large amount of education with local businesses, no matter where these boundaries end up. I'd say probably to start with 2 districts that are easy definable, one being Railroad Square, one being Courthouse Square, and then extending that over to the Brickyard should they want to participate, incorporate them like in the original district, just because the mall and 101 are easy definable areas to say, you can't go past here or there, not to mention anything else that's blocking the way. So yeah, I'm excited about this. I know that this is something that we could use to help activate the downtown, help activate Railroad Square. You see on social media, what do people in their 20s and 30s do in the city and stuff like that. This might be something to encourage that. But I think if we start with like Wednesday Night Market or Rose Parade or Pride and those kinds of events, it could be very beneficial. And any further comments?
Yeah, I think that to Chair Okrepke's point, this is going to feel really differently than the big parties in the mega cities around the United States. But what it brings up to my mind, I spend time with my family in Berlin, and the whole city, not saying that we would do this here, but the whole city is open carry. You can drink in public, and it's not really a problem because the population is socialized to it. And when I think about it, I think of places like the city of Sonoma where they have their square, and you rarely see any sort of raucous behavior over there either. I think it's a lot about setting a culture and not having alcohol be a thing that's associated necessarily with lots of amplified music or parties, but just more of maybe a cultural norm where people might have a glass of wine or a beer, but it's not getting crazy. And in that way, it encourages people to linger, frankly, spend money, rather than just go there and get torched, which is probably not the plan.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Might also incite economic development. It still blows my mind that there is not a tasting room on the square. That's crazy to me. it'd be nice to be able to like, hey, go to an event and be like, oh, I want to go get a margarita from La Rosa, or your favorite beer's on tap somewhere, and be able to go get that instead of what's just available right then and there, and you have to stay in a little square while you consume it.
One more thought. You said something about no glass and no metal. Did I hear that right?
Correct.
Why no metal?
And this gets discussed through law enforcement, is that typically they're plastic cups because of really the risk of metal and glass in a group of a significant number of people. And that's pretty common. Sporting events do the same. It's really just the issue of safety.
Is there any flexibility on that, or is that a matter of code, law, or whatever?
I don't know off the top of my head. We can review that as part of the process.
Okay, because I think when I think about metal containers, I'm thinking about really lightweight things. I mean, a soda can is in a metal container, right? So the last thing we need is more plastic junk in the world.
Yeah, and then just real quick on that, would our zero waste ordinance for to-go apply to this as well? So if they're going to use plastic, it would have to be a zero waste plastic or compostable?
Yeah, we'll have to look at the intersection of the zero waste as well for the beverage container.
Okay, because I think that would be, to Councilmember Fleming's point, I think those would be too nice, if you can use aluminum or some lightweight metal that is easily recyclable, or a compostable plastic cup or whatever it's not technically plastic, but you know what I mean, a compostable cup that could double for plastic. I think that would alleviate a lot of concern with waste, as well as the ability to walk around with the beverage. And unless there's any further comments, all right, that's the end of the matter, and we'll adjourn, or not adjourn, excuse me, we'll recess for, I don't know, we'll call it 5 minutes. We'll come back at 10:20. All right, and we are back at 10:20. We will move on to item 9.5, program updates. And as a reminder, there are multiple 9.5, so we're going to go through 9.5 A through D before we go to public comment, and then we will do it at the end.
All right,
Please.
Chair, thank you very much. Under this section for 9.5 under program updates, I'm just going to cover a number of different initiatives and projects that staff is working on. This is really an opportunity for me to share with the committee all of the activity that the small but mighty economic development team is currently engaged in. So I'm going to go ahead and just go through the list. I'll start with business recruitment and attraction. I can share that we're nearing completion of the draft business recruitment plan, which includes a target industries report. That plan is circulating internally at the staff level and at the executive level to receive department head approval and city manager approval. When those approvals are received, we'll be bringing that draft report to the Economic Development Subcommittee for feedback and for review. That report will identify and target specific industry types for business attraction and recruitment. Staff also, in regards to business recruitment and attraction, have completed the draft Why Invest in Santa Rosa guide. That guide will be made available and publicly available on our website. Once the virtual one-stop shop is completed, that guide gives developers and new businesses certain data points and metrics identifying why they should locate or move their business to Santa Rosa. The economic development team continues with our momentum on USL, the United Soccer League, and meeting all of our obligations under the ERN, or the exclusive right to negotiate. We continue to have recurring meetings with USL. The USL ad hoc was formed. The ad hoc had its first meeting, and its second meeting is upcoming this week. Staff also continues with post-ICSC prospecting conversations. We continue to work with retailers and companies with whom the City of Santa Rosa delegation met with while at the ICSC event, and we're continuing to work to attract opportunities to Santa Rosa out of those prospects that were developed. Finally, staff continues to work with new businesses who are moving into the area. One of note is a niche manufacturer. It's a women-owned business who is actually looking to relocate their existing operations to Santa Rosa. Our small business ombudsman, Rafael Rivero, is working very closely with that new business to walk them through the tenant improvement permitting process. They're looking to purchase a new building in Santa Rosa, and that new company would generate approximately 20 jobs. Moving on to business retention and support. Staff continues to assist businesses through our liaising program, which is part of the Business Concierge Service program, which was launched earlier this year to support businesses through liaising, to understand and navigate all of the planning, building, and other permitting processes. This includes working with our county counterparts, working closely with county environmental health on compliance and expansion needs of businesses in Santa Rosa. We continue to provide targeted assistance to small businesses that are navigating these processes. This also includes businesses who are navigating code compliance issues, issues with regards to the vacant buildings and lots program, other inspection issues. Through our small business ombudsman program and through our business concierge services, we're giving some businesses in the downtown areas some specific hand-holding as they try to upgrade their facilities to meet all of these requirements. We continue to also work with business support associations and organizations as well, in addition to working with just businesses directly. Just last week, we had a broker engagement meeting. We met with close to 30 commercial real estate agents to just sit with them and better understand what the city can and should be doing to help them in their efforts to pursue lease or sale transactions in the city to bring new businesses into the community. And we're also a partnership that we're exploring currently in collaboration with is with Sonoma Go Local, working very closely with them on developing ways that the city's economic development team and the Go Local team can work together to promote supporting local businesses. Moving on to economic vibrancy and resiliency. Our team, as indicated by program analyst Rachel Beer, we have now acquired Placer AI, which is a mobile analytics platform which allows us to use mobile analytics to understand dwell time and visits and to and from traffic tracking to business locations within the city. This has already proved very helpful as we've talked with businesses so that to help them understand where their consumers are coming from and going from prior to frequenting their business location. We are continuing to coordinate with other local economic or quasi-economic development partners like our local museums, recreation partners, fitness providers on understanding ways to better activate our downtown. One prime example of that is Second Sundays. I'm sure you've heard of Second Sundays. This is a really exciting initiative where, in conjunction with the downtown Courthouse Square Farmers Market, which is occurring now on Sundays, on the second Sunday of the month, economic development staff is there hosting a number of activities that are primarily focused at children. We bring Rosie the trolley out. We've been doing rides on Rosie. Last Sunday we had a small train that children and parents were able to ride around the square. We have the Children's Museum activating that space during that time. Outdoor fencing, done safely with the masks and everything for children. So just a lot of fun things that are happening in the square during those Second Sunday events. We are continuing to advance now the One-Stop Shop initiative, now that that contract has been executed with Serial Creative. We're continuing to work with other partners to identify opportunities for installation of placemaking devices in the downtown, which could include wayfinding signage, gateway signage, digital information, public information boards, perhaps security light poles, other initiatives to improve connectivity between transit, cultural sites, and downtown businesses. Moving on to section D, we have advanced the Asawa panel project into the production phase and received final family approval on the Asawa panels, and that contract is executed. It came to the full council. We're progressing the Art Walk project. Those contracts are currently out for execution. We've confirmed our artists, our location for those temporary sculpture pieces, which will be in place for 2 years. We continue to host successful outdoor Live at Juilliard concerts. Our first Live at Juilliard event had over 1,300 in attendance. Again, we were able to use that software mobile analytics platform to identify that. So we continue to have very good participation there. And we continue to coordinate with with our local museums and other art stakeholders on future exhibitions and other opportunities for collaboration, including the upcoming Christo exhibit. Under events and permitting, I can also share that was previously shared with the subcommittee that the city economic development team has taken on the management of events in the square, working in collaboration with the chamber on that initiative. The chamber transitioned through the month of July those responsibilities to the economic development team. The economic development team is now managing and permitting the Summer on the Square series, block parties, Wednesday night market, the Sunday market, other activities that are happening in the square. With this, we continue to work with event organizers on downtown activations and understanding better the way to activate public spaces, in particular operationally, how we can activate those spaces to support these events. One conversation around that has centered around the stage. There has been conversations before at this body and others about the possible need for a stage within the downtown to support these events. To date, over 40 activations have occurred in the square where a temporary stage has had to be constructed and deconstructed more than 40 times. That comes at a cost to the events every time they have to activate that stage. And then under other updates, I can share that we're working in collaboration closely with some of our other partner departments.
Real quick, Scott, just because
oh, we're on to 9.6. So we'll end there. We'll end there at 9.5. Any questions or feedback that you might have?
Any questions or feedback? We'll go to public comment real quick. Is there any public comment? Please make your way up to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to talk on this item, program updates. State your name if you wish.
Chair Krupke, Member Fleming, I'm Gig Hydell, Burbank Gardens neighborhood, also part-time city staff IT department. I'm not working today. These are my own opinions. So I would like to talk about business attraction, and I'm suggesting that you focus on businesses that have a high deal of growth. So growing businesses in growing industries, because in the United States, growing businesses in growing industries is what makes economic development and economic vibrancy. And a definition of a growing business is that an average annual growth rate greater than 20% over a 3-year period. And what I have here is a list of the products and services that the fastest growing businesses in the United States are now doing, and this is compiled by U.S. Chamber of Commerce, IBIS World, Statistica, Crunchbase, TechCrunch, U.S. Bureau of Statistics, ResearchForMarkets.com, McKinsey Report, Nielsen Report, Grandview Research, Reuters, and Yahoo Finance. These are not my opinions. So I'm going to submit this list to the recording secretary so you could have it for your minutes, and the staff could review this, and I hope we'll try to attract businesses that provide these kinds of new growing industries. And here I go as fast as I can. And the last 5 are the biggest growth. So solar panel manufacturing and installation, wind turbine maintenance and servicing. Oh, I forgot to say, nowhere on this list are wineries, breweries, agriculture, real estate, housing development, sports venues, tourism, entertainment. None of those things are in the fastest growing industries. These are the fastest growing industries, and these are the products and services they do. Solar panel manufacturing and installation, wind turbine maintenance and servicing, energy efficient appliances and storage solutions, niche online stores, subscription boxes and personalized products, automated order fulfillment services, virtual fitness classes, holistic health programs, meditation and stress relief apps, online tutoring services, educational software development, corporate training programs, virtual doctor consultations, AI-based diagnostic tools, wearable health technology, managed security services, ethical hacking and penetration testing, security compliance consulting, mobile pet grooming services, pet training programs, subscription boxes for pet products, zero waste products, eco-friendly packaging solutions.
Thank you, Gig. You ran out of time.
Oh, damn.
No worries. Appreciate it. You will submit
more.
that. Yeah, I know. I understand.
Can I just do the last 5?
No, we'll submit it to the recording secretary, so we'll get it, and staff will get it. I appreciate it. Thank you. With that, we'll bring it back for comments.
Yeah, the one thing that stood out to me when you were talking about options for wayfinding, placemaking, a couple things actually. One is that I think the public, and I'll add myself to the list, finds it confusing, frustrating as to why we always talk about this stuff, but we do not do it. It seems to the public like it should be pretty straightforward to put up placemaking, posts that point in the area, in the general direction of things. I think after 7 years in doing this job, I can sort of understand why it takes a while, but even then, I think we just got to move forward with some sort of way to signal where we are, especially now that we are looking to have some money from EIFD in the next couple of years. The other thing is that digital placemaking is generally really ugly. The one place that I think that it has some use is around transit, because you just kind of need it. But even then, I'd be wary of anything that just wasn't super visually aesthetically pleasing. So, thanks.
Thank you. And I'll just add, The two things that stood out for me, I don't think there's anything that I've heard more about outside of city services since I've been on council than the Ruth Asawa panels in Fountain. So I'm excited to see that come forward and to see the possible uses and final project. And then lastly, the great stage debate. Do we need a permanent one? Do we need a permanent one in specific places? I look forward to how that gets played out. I think that's going to be there's going to be a lot of input on that going forward from various people on this dais as well as in the community. So thank you for that. Now we can move on to 9.6.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to 9.6, just to wrap up with some other updates and announcements, and I can just add in a note of appreciation and just in response to Councilmember Fleming's comments. We've adopted a mantra in the economic development team, and we say that is that we've adopted a culture of action and a propensity for doing. So I think we're very interested in moving projects forward to execution and looking at specific delivery timelines and execution dates is something that Director Osborne and I discuss quite frequently. But to sort of bring us home here, I can share that the economic development team, this small team of 4 individuals, we're doing quite a bit with also admin support and some outside support. We understand that we have to work with and collaborate with other partner agencies in order to bring these projects to execution. So we're working very closely with our finance team on a number of initiatives, working closely together, also with our IT team. One project that we're working on with our IT team currently is the development of a new business intake form, which is a part of our one-stop shop portal where businesses can go online, enter their information, and communicate through that portal what type of services they're looking for, what type of support they need for their business, and then that triggers a response or a communication to our team, and then through the business concierge program, we're able to reach out to that business, open up a case, and start delivering services to them. And that's a new function or a platform that IT is building in-house for us, and they're doing a wonderful job, and I imagine you'll receive a presentation on that in the future. Also continuing to work with IT and our internal staff and our consultants on the new dashboard, the economic development dashboard that's being developed, also the one-stop shop which is being developed. We're continuing to advance the placement of a new art and culture intern who will come out of either the university or the JC and work with our team on a number of art and culture initiatives. We're very excited about that. And then with taking over the management and administration of events in the square, moving forward with the full-time art and event specialist, which was approved as part of the budget process. In terms of collaboration, we're also collaborating very closely with our Parks Department on how to expend capital dollars in the downtown on various downtown activation strategies, which includes some of the strategies that we've talked about here today. And Director Dan Hennessy will be coming, I believe, on August 19th. Talk a little bit more about the collaboration between parks and economic development and how we can move some of those projects forward to fruition and actually see some of these things pop up within the downtown. And so with that, I just want to thank staff, thank our team, thank Director Osborne for his continued leadership. I want to thank admin staff for all the work that they did to get this meeting set up here. We'll be meeting in the chambers moving forward. And that concludes the presentation today. Thank you very much.
All right, no questions. We'll go to public comment on 9.6. Any of the updates? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We'll go to item 10, future agenda items. Do you have anything you would like to add to a future agenda? Either do I. I think this might be also a good opportunity, as this is a very important subcommittee. Would it be appropriate, and I'll defer to you, to talk about some of the things we may have in the hopper tentatively? We'll underline in bold, italicized, tentatively, for our next economic development subcommittee, so that people are aware of some of the things we might be discussing as it goes into the future?
Yes, I can share to that effect that in the October meeting, we will have a presentation on the procurement policy, the procurement and purchasing policy, similar to what we received today from finance. A member of the finance team will come and talk about, run us through how the procurement policy works and just the history of that. And we certainly could lay out in this section maybe some things that are forthcoming, like the target industries report and some of the other reports that we're bringing to Economic Development Subcommittee in the future. But Director Osborne, did you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And I think that's really an excellent point. You know, we've talked about some of the work that we've done on the use permit process to streamline that. That will be coming forward in the committee as we start forming up that program. We also discussed in previous meetings a discussion about the vacant building and lot program and getting a status update on that. Staff is working on that. I think one of the really interesting topics, and Scott mentioned it, is we are in tight coordination right now with our partners over at Transportation and Public Works for actually the delivery of park-specific projects and downtown-specific projects. So as that starts to materialize, and much of the focus has been on what can we do in 12 months, what can we do in 24 months, and looking at those two cycles, and really how that rolls out and when we need to gain public input on that. I think that's going to be a really exciting program to work on, that, you know, how that dovetails with the EIFD in the future and really how we can do some transformative things in our downtown. So definitely a lot on that front, but happy chair in the future. We're always working on future agenda items, so we'd be happy to bring forward what can be expected in the next few months or so in future agendas.
That'd be great. I would appreciate that. Thank you. All right, we'll go to public comment on this matter. If anybody has public comment on future agenda items, seeing none, we'll close public comment, which will move us to item 11, adjournment. We'll adjourn at 10:41. Thank you.